Hello and welcome to my new video. I'm going to be doing something different this time, showing you all of the products that I'm intending on using on an art journal book that I bought about a month ago. So I'll be using washi tape and inks, charcoal, pencils, stencils and stamps, my brother printer, and I've got some tissue paper there and a little die cut. And I've bought this book about a month ago. Somebody inspired me to do some art journaling and it's just all blank and so pretty that I didn't want to start. So I've decided I have to start. So I've got this paper here that I'm just going to be using between the sheets just so that I don't damage any pages or put any ink on any pages while I'm doing one. And so this will just catch any extra ink and things like that as I'm inking the pages. So I'm using this picked raspberry Distress Oxide, and I'm also using, I think it's cracked pistachio is the other colour that I will be using on this page. Looking for quite a bright background, feeling very bright and happy and cheery today on this rather nice Sunday. So I was sitting next to somebody at a crop a couple of months ago, or about a month ago, and she was doing some art journaling, and it's something that I've always really wanted to do, but never gotten around to it. And inspired by her, the next day I went out and bought this journal. And as I say, I have been doing various scrapbooking bits and pieces, but not started this. And it's quite hard to start a fresh new book. It was a little bit daunting. And so I've joined a Facebook group where they give you prompts for journaling. And one of the prompts was your guilty pleasure. So this page is a little bit about my guilty pleasure, or one of them. So I've inked the background here, and now I'm going to be using the tissue paper, and I've got a big word stamp here that I'm going to be stamping onto the tissue paper. And then I'm going to be tearing this and adding little bits and pieces of it. So I stamped that straight the first time, and then thought actually I might just stamp this sort of random all over the place, leave it a little bit void and a little bit dark in places. And I've decided to take off some of the extra ink, make sure there's no extra ink. So I turned that round and just patted that down on my piece of paper. And now I'm going to be using some Mod Podge to stick this down. Now, we didn't think about this before, and I wondered after I'd done this whether this was such a sensible idea, because I was a bit concerned that the other stamping and things that I want to do on top might not work on top of the Mod Podge, because it has a little bit, it is a matte one, but it still has a little bit of a glossy finish to it. But as it turned out all right. I was still able to stamp on top and ink on top of this once it was dry, so I was quite pleased about that because I was a little bit concerned. So I'm just randomly putting these down. I was about to stick this down and I realised actually I don't want that straight edge, so I've ripped the edge so there's no straight edges on here, and sticking that down. Now I'm going to come in with a brown Distress Oxide with my stencil. Now this stencil is quite a nice stencil. It has spots and it has a few little boxes as well, so I incorporate a little bit of the boxes. It's more the spots I wanted, because my guilty pleasure when I get round to the little bit of journaling that's on here is Maltesers. I'm a bit of a naughty one with the Maltesers, and I don't like to share anything else, but I don't share my Maltesers. So that's sort of what this page is about. And I did randomly go 3/4 of the way into the book, so I'm not starting on the first page. I'm now getting a couple of heart little stamps out, and this little round stamping block. Going to stamp a few little hearts. I really wasn't thinking about where I was putting things whilst I was doing this page. It just really, as the mood took me. I'm going in with this little girl die cut. Quite like these characters, they're quite funky. I haven't purchased the stamps, but I saw these little die cuts and thought that would be great. And now I'm using my brother printer. I have a white cartridge in here, and I had already put in part of my saying what I wanted to say, and then I decided I would have a little bit more to say on here, so I'm just typing out the rest of the words that I wanted to use. So I'm now thinking about colouring up my image here, and I'm using these zig pens with a water marker. So if you use a little bit of water, you can get the markers a little bit lighter. So I started off doing that with this and then thought, actually I won't. I will just colour straight on to the little girl and add definition as I go along. So just keep adding little bits, little marks here and there, and kind of dragging the pen with the water brush. And then I have my cloth there to just clean up the any extra ink on the water brush when I want to change colours. So I'm just adding a little bit of water. Now these are great used on watercolour paper, but they also do work on other paper. It is best to add a little bit of water to the paper before you put the ink down. As we all know, as soon as you put ink down, it soaks straight into the paper. So if you put down the water on top of the paper first, it does give you a little bit of chance and a little bit of time to play around with it. So I quite like these. I've not practiced a lot with them. I am trying a few techniques here and there with them, so you will see me use them on other pages. But I found that it also had a lovely pink that went with the pink that I used on the page. The other option I had was to use, I have a brush that I can use with my ink pads that has a reusable nib, and you just use it on your ink pad and then brush with that if I wanted the exact same colour. But this colour suited quite nicely and went really well with it. So I'm doing like really bright pink spots on this dress and then dragging the rest of the colour throughout the image, just so that I get sort of a whitewashed background to the material of the skirt. So just finishing that off now. It's quite a quick technique. As I wasn't cutting this, I had to make sure I didn't go out the lines. Sometimes when I use these, if I'm using them with a stamp, I don't worry about going outside of the lines because I'm going to cut the excess paper off. But as this was a die cut, I had to be a little bit more careful and not go out of the lines, because I didn't really want to cut around this any more than that is already there. I checked that green and thought, actually, no, I was thinking about doing the other part of the dress with the green and thought, no, that might be a bit too much. And that green didn't really go. So I'm just colouring her boots there in a little bit of grey. And other than that, I am just adding a little bit of flesh colour to her arms and to her face in a moment after her boots have been done. So I have the writing here that says, don't ask me to share my Maltesers, that I can't do. So that's my guilty pleasure. It's one thing that I have been known for a very long time. In my single days, I used to go very frequently to the movies with friends, and yes, I got told off by one friend many years ago that I would never share my Maltesers. She pointed it out to me, but they're mine. It's my thing. So that's what this page is about, really. So now I'm looking at cutting these words down or thinking about it, but then I think, actually, I had the washi tape there, so I'm going to go in with a little bit of washi tape. You see that I ripped the washi tape because, again, I didn't want a straight line, so I've ripped it from one side and I've mashed the two straight lines together so that you don't have any straight line on there. Just adds a little bit more interest to the page. It fits in with the tissue paper as well, because it's got a typeface on. And then I decided that actually I wanted to do a little bit more. I wanted to have a little bit more of a texture on here. So I'm using my brayer here and some gesso, and I'm just rollering on the page just to add a little bit more texture and a little bit more interest. and I don't want to add too much. And here I go in a minute with a water spray. So I'm spraying a bit of water onto the roller and just to see if I can get a little bit more of the ink off that. And now I'm also using the water spray on the brush and adding some of the paint that's still on the brush onto the brayer. As you know, I like to try to use as much of my ink when I get it out of a pot or paint as I can. I quickly sprayed that with a little bit of water to see if it would lift some of the colour of the backing. As these are Distress Oxides, you can splash them with water and take a little bit of the colour off. It didn't do very much, but I thought I'd give it a go as I had my water out. So I've now stuck down my little girl and I'm just going in around the edge with charcoal pencil. I've gone in with a dark charcoal pencil, so I'm just drawing all the way around, and now I'm using this blending tool to smudge that, and I will be making a little bit of a shadow with that around the girl as well, just to give a little bit more interest to the page and to make her blend a little bit nicer into the page. So I'm also going around the outside of the die cut and anywhere where there's a little bit of white space, like by her neck, and just blending that in a little bit as well, so it doesn't look quite so stark and white all the way around her. And I'm just blending that down there. So one of the last things to do now is to put on my writing. Now these peel off quite nicely, but I don't want that wasted end. I want just the writing, and I'm just cutting that to say, don't ask me to share my, and then it's Maltesers, and then I'm just cutting the edges again off the other writing, just so I don't have that large blank space. I'm popping that down, and then I come in with a charcoal pencil around these as well and just smudge that all down. And that is pretty much it. And the very last thing to do is to stamp. It says started on March the 1st, 2020. So this is my page. I hope you like it. It's something a little bit different. We will no doubt be back to scrapbooking next week, but I thought you might like to see something different, and this inspired me to get this done. Thank you very much. Cheers. Bye-bye.